Welcome to Land of the Bible. I'm your host, David Sussman. This week, we're going to learn about the historical importance of Israel's Elah Valley. Southwest of Jerusalem, in the foothills of Israel's biblical heartland, the Judean mountains, lies one of the most contested regions in history, the Elah Valley. This is the land where faith met courage, where a shepherd boy named David stood before a giant and changed the course of history. But this valley holds more than just one story. Beneath its soil and among its hills are the remnants of ancient cities, echoes of forgotten battles, and secrets hidden deep underground. The Elah Valley has witnessed the rise and fall of kings and kingdoms, and hidden beneath these hills lies caves that once sheltered warriors, rebels, and people of faith. I'm David Sussman, and on this episode of Land of the Bible, we'll uncover the biblical past and reveal the untold stories of the Elah Valley. Join me as we journey through time, walking in the footsteps of kings, prophets, and warriors. Welcome to the Elah Valley, one of the most beautiful regions in all of Israel, nestled right in between the biblical heartland, the mountainous regions of Jerusalem, Hebron, and Bethlehem, and the coastal plains of modern Tel Aviv, but ancient Philistina, and their 5 major cities, Gat, Ekron, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Gaza. We are now standing on top of Tel Azka, an ancient Israelite fortified city with ruins that date back to the First Temple period. Tel Azka in Hebrew means an alarm, and the reason why is we are now roughly 1,000 feet above sea level, which offers those panoramic views of the entire area. So anybody heading from the coastal plains, enemies like the Romans, or before them, the Philistines, the Assyrians and Sennacherib, or even Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians, as they march towards Jerusalem from the coastal areas, this is one of the first places that they would see them. In fact, you can even see the remnants of what looks like a guard tower up here towards the top of the excavations. Azekah would be destroyed multiple times. One of those times was during that Assyrian conquest. However, due to its strength, it was one of the last 3 cities to be destroyed by the Assyrians. It would be destroyed later on by Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians when the Jews were sent into exile for 70 years. When the IAA, the Israel Antiquities Authority, with help from the University of Texas, was excavating here at Tel Azka, they came across the ruins I'm standing in right now. This area here was used as a workshop during the First Temple period. And we know this because we found Pieces like this, which was used for mortar and pestle to grind either incense or grain, medicine. We're not too sure what it was used for. Maybe there was even a shop here that dealt in jewelry. We don't know, but we know it was a workshop. In fact, human remains were found here, as well as burn marks. You can even see the burn marks in the pottery from the soil that hasn't been excavated yet. This pottery is sticking out here. Who knows what's in this mound of dirt right here? We can see pottery coming out, and we can actually see some of the burn marks. Just coming over here, I found pieces of pottery, large pieces like this. Interestingly enough, they didn't find any warheads. This place was not destroyed due to battle, but rather the earthquake that's talked about by Amos. Amos, who is a shepherd from the city of Tekoa, which is just on the outside of Bethlehem. And Amos talks about during the period of King Uzziah that there was a massive earthquake. But right here, even though not explicitly mentioned in the Bible, we know that this was the earthquake during the time period of King Uzziah. And what we have is an amazing opportunity to tap into that historical authenticity of the Bible. Let's head now to another location as we begin our story of David and Goliath.
Imagine walking where Jesus walked, where faith comes to life. Feel the Bible story unfold around you, from the green Galilee to Jerusalem's ancient streets. Experience the serene and welcoming land of the Bible, where miracles happen. Put your heart where His footsteps are. Visit Israel.
In this middle territory known as the foothills, the Shvela in Hebrew, is where many of the epic biblical battles were fought, including the battle between David and Goliath, the most epic battle of all time. Let's talk a little bit about Goliath, the Philistines, David, and the Israelites. So the Philistines are not indigenous to the land of Israel. They actually came over from around the area of the Greek islands. In fact, their name Philistine means invaders. And they'll arrive here roughly around the same time that the Israelites arrived after the story of the Exodus. The Israelites would settle in the mountainous areas. David and his family are living in Bethlehem. David's father, Yishai, Jesse, has 7 sons, 6 of them, big, tall, broad-shouldered, perfect for the army. But David is a little bit, well, on the smaller side. He's thin, he's got red hair and freckled face. His father, Yishai, sends him to be a shepherd in the fields where he will learn to protect his flock using a slingshot. It was these talents that'll help him to defeat Goliath later on. It wasn't until Yishai, Jesse, gives his son David, who will become king of Israel, some refreshments, olive oil, bread, cheeses, to bring to his mighty brothers and to the king of Israel, Saul. It was when he arrived to the encampment that he heard the blasphemy coming out of the mouth of Goliath. It was at that time he would decide that he would be the one to kill the giant. So it's just a short hike off the highway to get down to that brook, but it's just so beautiful here. I had to show you guys because what we're walking through right now is actually Elah, which is in the pistachio family, which is where this valley gets its name from. And well, you can see for yourself, it's absolutely stunning. On a tour here of the Elah Valley, talking about the story of David and Goliath, I'll bring tourists over here to what's usually a dried riverbed in which we can pull smooth stones similar to the ones that King David would have used. It's winter here in Israel. As hard as that may be to believe with these blue skies and all the sunshine today, the last few days we've had a tremendous amount of rain. In fact, where I live in Gush Etzion in the Judean mountains, it even snowed. So the riverbed is filled with water, so we can't go down there now. But we can imagine that in this Nachal, King David would have taken those smooth stones and with his slingshot would have thrown that stone right between the eyes of Goliath, knocking him out. With his big sword, he would have cut off the head of Goliath and then taken his head up to Sha'araim, the double gate city, in order to present it to King Saul and the Israelite army that was encamped there. Let's head up the mountain now and see that very special biblical fortified city. So we are hiking up now to the top of Tel Lachish, which is where most people believe the city of Sha'araim is located. And it's just very important to note that these Judean cities were built on the top of hilltops in order to be able to see and protect themselves. Behind me, you can see Azka, where we were earlier. To my right is the top of Sha'araim. And to my left, you have the Mediterranean and the coastal plains. And then even further to the right, you have the biblical heartland, the mountainous areas. All right, we just came from Tel Azka. We were down in the Elah Valley, the battle of David and Goliath, but this is the biblical city of Sha'araim. This is the two-gate city. This gate is facing the battlefield. If you remember your Tanakh, you know that David slices off the head of Goliath and he brings it to the city to present it to the king of Israel, Saul. This is the gate he walked through. This, without a doubt, it's the only place that I know in all of Israel that I can guarantee you come here with me, you are standing in the footsteps of King David. He entered this city gate here. This is unbelievable. Come with me. I'll tell you all the proofs that we know this is Sha'araim, that we know it dates back to the time period of King David. This is one of the most important biblical excavations, really in all of Israel. This is phenomenal. Here in Tel Lachish, ancient biblical Sha'araim, we get a look into the past to see how the Israelites, the nation of the Jewish people, lived literally 3,000 years ago. So how do we know that Sha'araim was a Jewish city? So one of the first things archaeologists do when they excavate a new site is to look for the remnant of animal bones. And here, there were no wild boar, pig bones to be found here, meaning that the people who lived here obeyed the dietary kosher laws, which means that this is a Jewish place. In addition, there were no graven images found here, which are two things that are found in all Philistine cities. So how do we know that the city of Sha'araim actually dates back to the period of David before he's king, and even after he's king. So one of the ways that archaeologists prove or date the time period is using pottery. Another way is carbon-14 dating. Now, olive pits like the ones I have right here were discovered here that they did some carbon-14 dating, and it dated to the 10th century BCE, which is exactly the time period of King David. But maybe the most impressive find discovered here was ostrakhan, pieces of pottery with ancient writing on it. In fact, it's the oldest biblical text that's ever been discovered. It mentions kings and helping the widows and the orphans. These are biblical values that have been passed down from generation to generation. In addition, there were several dwelling places that were discovered here, workshops and areas in which they could grind various types of grains in order to produce bread for the people here to eat, as well as cisterns like the one you can see here, in order to trap the rainwater during the 6 months it rains here in Israel, to ensure that there was enough drinking water for the inhabitants here during the dry months of summer here in the land of Israel. One of the most impressive things about visiting here is that we're standing in the ancient, but right over my shoulder you can see the modern city of Beit Shemesh. The Jewish people once again rising up, this revival of the return of the Jewish people to our ancestral homeland. But let's head on over there now and see ancient Beit Shemesh and the story of Samson. Walking here in Tel Beit Shemesh with the modern city of Beit Shemesh behind me, we are walking through 3,000 years of history. There are ruins here that date back all the way to the First Temple period, through the Byzantine period, and even later. Tel Beit Shemesh is probably the most significant, or its most significant biblical story, is that of the Aron HaKodesh, the Ark of the Covenant, returning to the Jewish people after it was stolen by the Philistines. The Philistines had taken the Ark back to their 5 main cities where it traveled from place to place. But wherever it went, the Philistines were stricken with various calamities. They finally said, enough is enough. They put the Ark of the Covenant on a wagon that was led by 2 beasts of burden. And they said, wherever it'll go, it will go. Well, it came here to Beit Shemesh, ancient Beit Shemesh, here in the Tel of Beit Shemesh today. And it landed in the fields of a man by the name of Yeshua, Yeshua of Beit Shemesh. In the book of Judges, it talks about the birth of Samson, the Nazarite, that he was born between Eshtaol and Surah. Well, over here to my right, where you can see the industrial park, just above it, there's a community over there that's called Eshtaol, because it's built on the ruins of ancient Eshtaol. A little bit further down the ridge, a little bit heading this way, you have a community known as Surah, which is built on the ruins of Surah. And somewhere in between these 2 biblical communities, which are now once again inhabited by Jews who have returned to their homeland, you have the birth of Samson the Nazarite. A Nazarite is an oath that's taken by people as a temporary vow. But Samson was something different. An angel had visited his mother and told her that Samson would be chosen to judge the nation, to give redemption to the Jewish people, but that there needed to be a vow, a Nazarite vow. He wasn't to cut his hair, he wasn't to touch dead bodies, and he wasn't to drink alcohol. We know throughout Shimshon in Hebrew, Samson's lifetime, he transgressed all of them. But it wasn't until the end when his girlfriend, Delilah, who was a Philistine, had betrayed him and cut off his hair. It was at that point he lost all of his strength and the Philistines were able to overwhelm him. However, God gave him strength in his final moments, and that's when he took the 2 pillars he was chained to and he tore that old building down, killing himself and all the Plishtim that were in the building. Let's head on over to another battle that was fought not far from here in a place called Midas. So beautiful walking through these orchards of olive trees and the gorgeous almond blossoms. You know, this is the first sign of spring here in Israel. And when these trees begin to bloom, you know the holiday of Tu B'Shvat is about to arrive, which is the New Year's of the trees.
I will bless those who bless you, God promised Abraham. Embrace this covenant by connecting with the people of Israel. From Jerusalem's stones to Galilee's shores, experience living faith through their traditions and hospitality. Your journey is more than visiting biblical sites. It's about hearts that welcome your friendship. Your presence matters. Discover Israel.
One of my favorite places in and around the Elah Valley is right here at the ruins of Midas. And the reason why is that this section of the nature reserve is filled with the most spectacular hiking trails. There's a beautiful loop all around this hill that probably takes about an hour and a half to go through. And hiking through it, you see ruins that date back to the Second Temple period. It's a beautiful example of burial chamber with a rolling stone, as well as an enormous bell cave that was used for raising pigeons that's known as a columbarium. But the site has incredible archaeological ruins that date back to the Bar Kokhba revolt. Bar Kokhba was a Jewish warrior that in the year 132 CE rebelled against Rome. It's the second time that the nation of Israel rebelled against Rome. But this time Bar Kokhba was tremendously successful. In fact, he threw out every Roman soldier and dignitarian from the entire land. We began to print coins and blueprints to rebuild the Beit Shemesh. Jews from the diaspora started to return home that many people, including one of the greatest rabbis of all time, Rabbi Akiva, thought that he was the Messiah. Of course, he wasn't, and Hadrian, who was the head of the Roman Empire at that time, came with half the Roman army and put an end to the rebellion. How was Bar Kokhba successful? He was successful by digging a system of caves and tunnels throughout these beautiful rolling hills here, which for the most part, once you dig down through the nari, a hard stone, it's all chalk, making it relatively easy. So when the Romans were coming around, banging on their drums, marching towards the biblical heartland, marching towards Jerusalem, Hebron, the Judean mountains, Bar Kokhba and his warriors would jump out of systems like this. Now this is a very big one, but sometimes they're very, very small. Jump out, attack the Romans, and then run back into the cave system, hiding the entranceway. So by the time the Romans turned around, they didn't know where the rebels had gone, and they were able to overthrow Rome at that time. You can see this cave system actually caved in a little bit. You have this big fig tree that's growing out from the bottom. But already just coming here, You can see the layer of nari, that hard stone, and then underneath it, it's already chalk. You just rub it with your hands, and the chalk comes right off. All right, wish me luck. Whew, that was amazing. Literally crawling through caves of history here. And look in here, you can see one of the small entranceways that would be really easy to cover up with a large bush for camouflage. Har Bracha is a place where prophecy is unfolding before our eyes, where the blessings of Genesis 12:3 are tangible. Seeing this land flourish is a reminder that the promise is continuing to be fulfilled. Thank you for joining us, and make sure to join us next time as we connect you to the people, places, and lands of the Bible.